repeat what I said earlier so that everybody who is listening can know the value of communication. How you communicate is how you're perceived, and how you're perceived is how you're being treated. If you don't like the way you're being treated, look at the way you're communicating. Don't blame other people.
Welcome to this episode of Confluence, where we explore communication at the boundary of language and culture. I'm your host, Barbara Boldt. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome my new friend, Gloria Pierre, to the show. Gloria is the president of Clearly Speaking and the author of 6 books. She specializes in communication and accent reduction training for career-conscious, foreign-trained professionals. Gloria and I met in a networking event a few months ago. We were drawn to each other because our missions are so similar. We both work with the non-native English-speaking population and professionals as well. What's different is the context. Gloria lives and works in Toronto, so she's on the Canadian side of the border, and I'm just outside of Detroit. So although we're very close, we're living and working in 2 very different contexts. And we found in our conversations with each other that there are some differences in how we do our work because of the difference in context. So Gloria, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for inviting me. I was eagerly looking forward to this.
Oh, I'm so glad. And it's a pleasure to have you here. So the first question I ask all of my guests is, tell us a little bit about yourself. You have a fascinating story. I've heard it and I love it. So why don't you tell our guests a bit about your background?
Okay. I was born and I grew up in South America, Guyana, South America. It's the only English-speaking country in South America. And now I live in Toronto. So when I came to Canada, it was a huge culture shock. And it took me years to get assimilated into Canadian society, because the environment, the culture was so different. And I didn't know about culture. I didn't know about anything when I came to Canada. I just assumed that everything was going to be the same. And I think that's the same for people who come to North America from other countries.
Absolutely.
Because it took me such a long time to get assimilated in Toronto, I began to notice a lot of differences. And there was one incident that happened years later in the workplace that caused me to think about culture and newcomers or people who come to the country. I know in your part of the world, you don't refer to people who come to the country as newcomers, but in Canada we do. And we also refer to them as immigrants, new immigrants. Mm-hmm. And I know you don't do that in your part of the world also, but we will talk about that because that's fascinating.
It is.
The incident that happened to me was about 25 years ago. I was bullied in the workplace. And because of that, I felt helpless and powerless. It's as though somebody sucked the power and the energy out of me. And after I got over that, I started to ask myself, how dare she treat me like this? What am I? Is it because I'm an immigrant? Or is it because I'm a woman? And lots of introspection later, my question changed to, what am I doing that caused her to treat me like this? And that started the journey on communication, because I did a lot of research. I interviewed a lot of people. I did a lot of reading to find out what is it that makes someone respected and someone disrespect you. Yeah. And after all the background work that I did, I realized, or I discovered, that communication is the one skill that we all use, and it's the one differentiating factor in how we are treated. So I discovered also that how you communicate is how you're perceived, and how you're perceived is how you're treated. So if you don't like the way you're being treated, look at the way you're communicating, which is exactly what I did in my situation. And when I realized that I was perceived as being passive and wanting to stay in the background and not having a voice about anything, or not sharing what I think, not articulating my thoughts, I delved into communication and I learned a lot about communication. I developed a couple of courses to help me to be the kind of person who is perceived as being assertive, not passive. I didn't want to be aggressive either. So I put myself through all the courses that I developed. I was the guinea pig for my own work.
Wow.
And I found out that it did work. So here I am today. And because of those courses and my experience, I started my company, Clearly Speaking.
Wow. That is it's so interesting, and it's so cool that you were the impetus for starting your business, your own experience, and the fact that it seems to me you realized that you could train yourself, right? You did the research, you developed these courses, and you tried them on yourself and found that they worked, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. That's really... There were many times when I was working and going downtown in the subway, I was doing all these vocal exercises to help my voice, and I was sitting there doing these lip exercises and everything, not realizing that I was in a public place and doing it, and people were looking at me very strange.
People were looking at you like, what is she doing?
Exactly. So when I realized that, I had to vary the time I went into work and maybe take different routes so I don't see the same people all the time.
Just so they didn't get freaked out by your machinations on the train. Oh, that's cute.
Yes.
That's funny. But I think it also speaks to your motivation in wanting to help others, because you knew how you felt when you were humiliated, I'm thinking. Yeah, that's basically what happened in that unfortunate bullying incident. And you are motivated to help others, because what you say about the perception is so true. And those judgments happen so quickly, don't they? They're like under the radar. That and people who are making the judgment and then have this opinion probably aren't even conscious of how that occurs. And I think you're right that, so we would both say that the onus in a way is on the speaker, the person who's speaking, to modify their behavior, because they can't control those biases or those impulses in the members of their audience. Is that how you speak about it? Yes.
And because of that, I developed, I developed about 30 training modules about everything communication.
Wow.
And because communication is internal and external, you talked just now about the external, the behaviors that people have, and they can't control it. But what I do in my training is also train them about how they are thinking about certain situations. And that's where culture comes in.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly where culture comes in. I know you speak about your work. I think we both know that it's a mix of language and culture, isn't it?
It is, yes.
One of my challenges is differentiating what I do from English lessons, like, classic English lessons.
Yes.
And the way I try to do that, and you can tell me if this is the way you do it as well, is to say, well, they're intertwined. This language and culture, these two aspects, you really can't separate them.
No.
So if you're not dealing with both of them in the same moment, you're not really looking at the whole picture.
Yes, I agree. Because everything that we do is culturally based.
Yeah, everything we do.
Yes.
And so I think we're on the same page there for sure.
Yes.
So I just want to have you give us a sense of who are these people that you work with? Who are the clients that you serve?
The clients that I have are people who speak English as a second language. People who speak English, but they don't speak it well. And one of the misconceptions that newcomers here in Canada have is that if you speak English, you speak it well. But you and I both know that that's not the case.
Right.
It just depends who we learn it from. It depends where we came from and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So the clients, again, people who speak English as a second language and who are not easily heard and understood.
Right.
people who speak English, but they know that it's not up to par with their career goals. So they need to upgrade their communication skills. And people who are looking for work, most of the times that the interview is the first impression they're giving to a prospective employer. And if they are not listening, if they are not organizing their thoughts, if they don't know how to ask questions, if they don't know how to answer questions, if their voice doesn't sound confident, it's going to reflect very badly on them. And they may not be considered.
Right. So you're interviewing with you're interacting with them very early. Yes. In their career journey.
Well, yes, some of them, yes, but some of them are already in jobs, but now they're looking for promotions or looking for other career growth. And so, I work with them to suit where they are.
I see. Yeah. Yes. That's definitely my focus is with the ones who are looking for the promotion. I don't tend to get involved with them as early as the interview, although I have coached some people for interviews as well. But I think that brings up a little bit of the conversation we were having before we started taping, which is the difference between the Canadian reality and the U.S. reality regarding this. You use the term newcomer and immigrant. And tell me what that means in Canada, like in Canadian speak.
So newcomers and immigrants are used interchangeably. And when newcomers come in, they are given resources to help them to assimilate. It could be, welcome packages. They are given resources for language training. They are given all sorts of resources to help them to assimilate into their new home, into their new country, as quickly and as easily as possible.
Now,
we pay a lot of attention to newcomers and immigrants.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting to me. I was going to ask, is that something that's like at a national level?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the difference. Here in the U.S., we were talking before that the word immigrant has somewhat negative connotations in our culture, especially right now, because of all the speak about illegal immigrants, which certainly not all immigrants are illegal, but that word tends to be associated with the ones who come across the border and are working in the lower level jobs, possibly under the radar and illegally. And I think a key word you use that kind of for me is the differentiator between the two contexts is that word assimilation, because I think in the U.S., we pay less attention to helping people assimilate. And certainly there's not a national policy about that. It happens. There are organizations, like there's an organization here in Detroit called Global Detroit, and they're very much involved with immigrant communities here locally. And I think they do provide some of those resources or help people find them. Right. But it's sort of one-off, not-for-profit organizations in our context. Yeah. Which is why I tend to focus on the people who have been posted here. It's like the people who, expats, the people who come in for work in a professional context would be more of the people that I have access to.
Wow.
So it's super different.
Yeah.
So your business model must be tied to this. You are a resource, right?
Yes, and I work with a lot of non-for-profit organizations who give me the clients to train.
Right.
Whether it's most of it is basic communication skills or public speaking skills, I should say, to get them job ready.
I see. Yeah, because I would imagine that many of those people are professionals already in their own right.
Yes. And one of the observations I have of the newcomers here in Canada is the majority of them are very intelligent, very highly educated. Right. And I have clients who live in different parts of the world, all living here in Toronto. And I am fascinated by their the stories they tell, by the way they express themselves, by their culture. I learned so much about their culture.
That's fascinating.
One of the things that I realized in doing this communication business is that when you engage people in conversations, it doesn't matter who it is. And testament is the two of us, for example, right? When you engage people in conversations, you get to understand them. Yes. And when you understand, you really can't judge. If you truly understand, you can't judge.
Right. And I'm sure those stories and who they really are also helps you determine how you can best help them.
Right.
It's that, you know, what path does this person need, or what journey do they need to go on with me in order to help them.
So what I also do before we get into the external communication is I train them, or I give them information on the internal communication, like culture, where they came from, what sort of society they came from, individualistic or collectivistic. Were they able to make their own decisions, or were decisions made for them? Are they high context or low context? Like, what do they value more? Present-oriented society, past-oriented, or future-oriented society? So all of that comes in, because once they get to know who they are, their cultural identity, then they stop blaming themselves. Because sometimes what happens is you do something and you think, oh my gosh, that's so dumb. Why did I do that? Right? And you blame yourself, not realizing that it could be culturally influenced.
Yeah, for sure.
And it has nothing to do with you personally. It's how you were brought up. Maybe it's something somebody said from your neighborhood or your culture or your community. And when you start to realize that, you start to realize that you are not to be blamed for every single thing that happens to you, or every single decision that you make, because those decisions more than likely are culturally influenced.
Yeah. Well, and also I think that sets the groundwork for helping them. I call it, I help my clients learn a different way of being, a different way of communicating. And often it is culturally different. It serves them in dealing with the reality that they now find themselves in the American reality, in my case, in the Canadian reality, in your case. So it's that code switching, isn't it? It's and you had to learn that for sure when you came.
Yeah. And when I started to incorporate this into my training, I realized why it took me so long to integrate into Canadian society.
Right.
Because at the time when I came, it was always us, the immigrants versus them. Right. That's the mentality we had, right? And that's the mentality everybody had. But now it's different, because there's so much more immigration, or so many more people coming into the country, that we are accustomed to this now.
Yeah. I learned it when I moved to Italy, because I was the outsider. So I learned all of that in my European experience of living in two different countries and several different realities there, that I had to develop these alternative ways of communicating and sort of being in order to, and I don't know if it was even integrate, but at least be heard. I think that's the real key thing, is that people have to, the reason we modify our behavior is always to get a result. It's that, what do we need to accomplish in this situation? Right. And what are the communication behaviors I need to enact in order to get me there? And that's very much the way I put it to people, is that this isn't just, we don't just modify our behavior for our health. It's not just for no reason. It's because this is how we're going to progress. Right. There's a certain result that we want. Exactly. And for people who are not very confident by modifying their behavior all the time to suit the situation, they lose their sense of self. Yeah. And their culture also. So like I said, the training that I do is very comprehensive. It's holistic. Yeah. It's not only about communication. It's about culture. It's about your self-image. It's about impression management. Yep. And for accent reduction, I developed a methodology that helps people to reduce their accent. And they can see noticeable improvement after a couple of hours. Wow. Obviously, they have to do the work. It's not like a magic pill I can give you. You put it on your tongue and magically, the accent is gone, or you're more easily heard and understood. And so I had to learn about all of that too, like consonants and vowels and the position of the tongue and the mouth and all sorts of stuff. So in this business, in my business, I should say, since 2000, because now
this month is actually 22 years since I've been in business.
Wow.
Yes. And so it was very heady because I learned so many things. And I think that's why I am curious to learn more things. And I get excited when I have somebody sitting in front of me or a group of people sitting in front of me and I can say, ooh, this is good. This is good.
There's something new for me to learn. Wow. I love this. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's super fantastic. Can you just put into words some of the challenges that your clients face that you see most frequently?
Okay. The first one for everybody, whether they're English speaking or non-native English speaking, is the voice, the sound of the voice.
Yeah.
The voice is the impression that lasts, the vocal impression that lasts the longest.
Yep.
And some people's voice are soft, or some are so illegible that nothing is coming out of their mouths. So they're mumbling. Right. So a survey was done a couple of years ago, and with 500 men and women about their top communication challenges. And out of the top 10, 5 or 6 were voice related.
Wow, interesting.
Yes, because people are speaking too soft. They are running out of breath. They're mumbling. Many intonation pattern. Yeah, many vocal challenges. So that's one of the challenges that people who come to me have. The other thing is vocabulary.
Yeah.
Because when you don't have and you don't have to have an extensive vocabulary, but you have to use more words than you are using right now. And the thing is, we all know more words than we are using right now.
For sure.
Right? And when we are thinking about, what was that word again? And then we start going into the filler words.
Yes.
The filler words and the voice and all the other communication challenges contribute to the impression that you're making.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Posture, body language. The other challenges that people come to me for, especially those who speak English as a second language, are pronunciation.
Yes.
Pronunciation and grammar.
Right.
And specifically in grammar is the pronunciation of past tense. Yeah. And prepositions.
And putting endings on words. That's another one I find. There are certain language groups that won't put the S on the end. And so then they've screwed up their grammar because they're not in the right tense. Exactly.
Or they put the adverb in the wrong place and so forth.
Yeah.
So grammar is a big thing.
I find that I wanted to ask you this. I find that people, if you bring up the word grammar, they just shut down. So many people think it's not important, but the way that I talk about grammar is that it's clarity. If you're not speaking grammatically correctly, your message isn't going to be clear. Is that the way you speak about it as well?
Oh, yes. Yes. And I think people have this negative view of grammar because of how it was taught, how we learned it in school, right?
Diagramming sentences.
Is being taught differently these days. And we were never taught the importance of grammar. We were just told we had to learn it.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right. Yeah. And some people have encouraged me not to talk about grammar because it sounds more like English lessons, but I'm like, sometimes it's an issue. If someone is putting English words in a Spanish sentence, I have to help them correct that because otherwise they're not going to get their message across clearly. But go ahead.
Yes. Yes. I don't know if you can see in my background, there's a poster.
Yes.
New Words. So that was the first book that I wrote.
I see.
And the New Words is really to bring all the words that you know into the forefront so you can use them.
Oh, I see. Do you have specific exercises that help people do that?
Yes. So in this book, for example, I have what I did for this book. I gave a list of about 500 words to people in different age group, different cultures, different industries, and ask them to choose words that they can easily use in everyday conversations without sounding pretentious. And so the words that they chose are in this book, and it's the word, the meaning, the origin of the word, how it's used in a sentence.
Wow.
And I also have the synonyms. So altogether in this little book, which can fit into a guy's shirt pocket, has over 1,100 words.
Wow. That's a fantastic resource.
It is. And also in the book, it has 2 lines under each word where you can practice using either the word or the synonyms in a sentence or to make phrases for when you're ready. And
That's
at the back of the book is the word search puzzles. So for everything that I do, I research it extensively, whether it's a book or a workshop that I'm developing.
It sounds like it. That's really impressive. And that little book sounds like I'm sure a lot of your clients have really benefited from having that in their shirt pocket.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's not back pocket anymore, shirt pocket.
Well, and I'm sure you know what I find with my clients as well, and it was true of me in Italy as well, is that you get reliant on certain words and you know that you can produce them every time. So you just pull those out. And I find often with the other thing is, as you know, that high context, low context difference of that's a communication, an intercultural communication term that Gloria and I both know and use. But basically, in higher context cultures, they use more vague language on purpose because it's a face-saving mechanism. And when they're speaking in English, that they still are using those vague terms like thing and stuff and the words that don't carry really accurate, specific meaning. Yes. And I work with people a lot on that to weed out those non-specific terms.
Yes, weak words, I call them.
Yeah, weak words, exactly. They don't, and I teach pitching, the context of, or the creating a message that's time limited. Oftentimes a pitch is 3 minutes or 5 minutes. And in those kinds of situations, every word counts. So those weak words don't serve in that context for sure.
No.
For sure.
No.
So I know you've been doing some events recently and putting on some workshops. What have been the themes of some of these workshops that you've been asked to develop recently?
Well, to give you an idea, I had a group of people who did a phase 1 communication training. I think there were 8 weeks of training. So we talked about vocabulary, asking better questions, voice, vocal clarity, listening, self-talk, and organizing your thoughts. And in this next phase 2 session that's happening right now, it's actually starting today.
Oh.
Yeah, our grammar, playing in the playpen. It's for this particular training, there are some topics that are covered in my book, ABC for the Workplace. And I'm sorry, I don't have one to show you right now, which is really bad. I should have been prepared.
That's okay.
But they're all on my website. So from ABC from the Workplace, I think there are 4 of the sessions that will be covered from topics from that book will be covered in 4 of the sessions. So playing in the playpen, which is like your personality type, how to resolve a difficult situation. And I can't remember the other 2, but for all 4 of those sessions, it's in a round table format. So the people who are coming, they will read those chapters, and we will discuss it in detail. And in those sessions, they're getting a chance and the opportunity to practice their public speaking skills. And get
are you doing these in person yet, or is are you doing it in person yet, or is it still virtual? No,
online.
It's all virtual.
Yeah, it's all virtual. Yes, and some of the other topics that are covered are self-management. So zapping your negative self-talk, your cultural identity. We're going to delve more into that, and some other ones, and I don't remember them all. There are too many workshops that I'm doing all at the same time. But and I also have some of my courses online. So the accent reduction workshop is called the Be Heard, Be Understood, and that's online. That's an online course. So it can be offered in 3 different ways. It can be offered as a self-study, and it can be offered as cohort-based.
Okay.
So they would read the chapter, or they would read they would study on their own the first module, And then we have a discussion at the end of the week where we discuss that, answer questions. And the third format is personal coaching.
I see. One-on-one.
And for the personal coaching, they will also get the online course. So, and the online course, they have access to it for as long as they want. I
see. That's a cool model.
Yes.
Why don't you, since you've shared all of that, why don't you share your website address?
Okay. It's www.clearlyspeaking.ca.
Okay. The CA is at the end for Canada. So
right.
It's not a com, it's a CA.
That's right. It's not a com, it's a ca.
All right. So clearlyspeaking.ca.
Right.
Is your website.
Yes. And what I've just added yesterday, and it's not up on my website as yet, but I can send you the link, is I am offering now a 30-minute communication assessment for $30. And it's all on Calendly. So you choose your time and date there and you pay there. And then we do a 30-minute assessment.
I see. That's
so
great.
I will send you that link because it's not on my website as yet.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll get that out to everybody. No problem.
Yes.
Well, I really thank you for joining me today, Gloria. This has been a fascinating conversation, as I knew it would be. It was a real pleasure to have you explain your work in a Canadian context. And I hope people have found this to be very interesting. Is there anything final that you'd like to say?
I would just like to repeat what I said earlier so that everybody who is listening can know the value of communication. How you communicate is how you're perceived. And how you're perceived is how you're being treated. If you don't like the way you're being treated, look at the way you're communicating. Don't blame other people. Look at the way you're communicating.
That is perfect. I love that. That's your mantra, and I love your mantra. Yes. It makes so much sense. I've heard you say it before, and I know I'll hear you say it again. Yes. Well, thanks again, Gloria. It was a pleasure to have you. And for the audience out there, if you've enjoyed this episode, please go to the YouTube channel and give it a like, and even consider subscribing to Confluence. If you'd like an assessment of your communication here in the U.S. context, feel free to get in touch with me. You can go to my website, which is www.boldtglobal.com. And there are plenty of places on the website where you can sign up for a conversation and assessment. Thanks again, Gloria. And
Thank you.
I know I will see you soon in another networking event.
I am sure. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
You're very welcome.